Welcome everyone, this is Andre's Restart, and this time we are talking about a rumor for the 3D Mario game, the next mainline 3D Mario that will be launching early into the life cycle for Nintendo Switch 2 that, yes, a lot of us believe will be coming out sometime next year. Now again, this is a rumor, take it with a grain of salt. However, this rumor is coming from a potential leaker that upon closer inspection I think may be more credible than we've been giving credit for. So I would like to talk about this leaker, some of the things they said and how reliable they may or may not be, and also go into this rumor and consider the possibility of it being true, because if it is, well, it wouldn't be quite what I would expect, but also it could be very exciting, and that's what I would like to talk about today. But before going forward, let me point out that we are aiming to reach 50,000 subscribers, so if you do enjoy my content, please subscribe and hit the notification bell, and enjoy the ride as we talk about Nintendo every day. So the leaker in question is Nash Weedle. So Nash Weedle has some new things to say about 3D Mario, but before we get into that, I wanted to go over a little bit of their history here, and have a little bit of a discussion on whether this person is reliable or not. So, the big point that a lot of us have discussed in the past, and I've discussed in the past, where I was like, oh, this person is pretty good, is the Metroid Dread stuff. So if you look at this tweet here, all the way back in May 30th, 2020, they were already talking about Metroid Dread, but then even in 2021, they were talking about a 2D Metroid being made by Mercury Steam coming out in 2021, and there is this point right here that a lot of us have brought up in the past that just really seem to suggest that this person may know something, at least when it comes to development going on in Spain. But what some have suggested is that perhaps this person has simply been stealing or borrowing information from other places, and it's not they themselves that knows anything. But I haven't actually seen any of that. I haven't seen anyone who leaked this information beforehand. It may have been speculated, but I haven't seen anyone who's leaked it. And I haven't seen anyone talk about this before Nash Weedle. So if someone has any information on that, check the actual dates, because I've seen people share information with me in the past, and the dates are different. Like, actually, like, the videos talking about Metroid Dread after Nash Weedle started talking about this. So the claim that Nash Weedle has stolen information, I'm not saying it's false, I'm just saying I haven't seen proof of it. So there's that. But let's continue on, because there are other things Nash Weedle's talked about that interestingly have somewhat lined up with what actually has gone on. So not too long ago, Nash Weedle talked about a dev kit being available for Switch 2 for a Spanish developer. And what's interesting about this is that only about a month or so later did it become accepted knowledge that yes, Switch 2 dev kits are out there. And we had all the different reports from Gamescom and such, but even before that, there was a Final Fantasy VII remake rumor, all for Switch 2, and this came before all of that. So you could argue that maybe they were making a prediction that was just well-timed, and it was just coming out just a bit beforehand, but they were calling this a leak. I've noticed that when they're talking about leaks, they say Leak Express. And what I have noticed is they do try to make the distinction between leaks and predictions. Like, for example, here, Nash Weedle is saying, mis predicciones de Switch Mini Pocket. So this is in Spanish, but it's just a prediction that there will be a Switch Mini revision next year, which, by the way, I also am kind of expecting as well. Maybe not necessarily a Switch Mini, but some sort of smaller Switch revision, like maybe a Lite with an OLED screen. Or maybe what Nash Weedle is suggesting here is going to be the case. Like, I definitely think something like this could be in the works, but this is a prediction, right? It's not necessarily a leak, and they like to make that distinction. So, that doesn't prove anything, but it does make me think that they do try to differentiate, and that, for me at least, I offer a few points for that. Like, I take them a bit more seriously when they try to distinguish between the two. So it's not necessarily all straight up, oh yeah, I got leaks here and there and that's all I do. So maybe it isn't the case that they're just trying to leak things left and right all the time to try and gain some credibility on Twitter and popularity. And to that point, I haven't noticed them leaking things all the time either. They just kind of talk about different things they're interested in. They make their predictions. They occasionally have leaks, which is why we see the Leak Express. And on that note, there is something else here that I would like to discuss that they've kind of hinted at in the past that's interesting. So, Nashville was being asked about sharing imagery suggesting the future of Bandai Namco and their partnership with Nintendo, and here he pointed out that yeah, he had put out an image in the past showing the changes of the Bandai Namco logos and how it's increasingly become closer and closer to Nintendo, just hinting at that relationship. And now we have the Bandai Namco Studio, Studio 2, and Studio S that is a Nintendo-dedicated studio. The implication being that they may have been hinting at this kind of future where Bandai Namco is increasingly becoming closer and closer to Nintendo. Now, they didn't call this a leak. Maybe it's just their own personal speculation on the direction they're headed in, which I do think was reasonable speculation. But I guess the point here is that there does seem to be a lot of conversations that come from the Nashville side of things that tend to line up with what's actually going down. So with that said, let's go over the rumor here. So again, I call it a rumor, they call it a leak, because I assume that's because they're getting it from information that they believe they're leaking out. But this is the translation. Leak Express, would you like the next 3D Mario or mustachioed hero to visit worlds from other Nintendo sagas? Well, it seems that Nintendo has already experimented with this and it could become a reality at some point. Can you imagine Mario traveling through Hyrule or piloting the R-Wing? And then here he puts an image of Super Mario Omniverse with the different Nintendo worlds on the sides there and even Breath of the Wild in the middle. So is there anything to this idea? Well, I want to kind of emphasize the wording here because they say that Nintendo has already experimented with this and it could become a reality at some point. So there's no guarantee. Of course, with any of this stuff, there is no guarantee. I think that's inherent, but of course, take it all with a grain of salt, be cautious. But what I find interesting about this is that this could be a hint as to what we should maybe expect from the next 3D Mario game. And admittedly, when I first saw this, I didn't think much of it. Because I was like, oh, okay, this is not guaranteed. I'm not sure on the credibility of the source here. And the idea of Mario going into the world of Star Fox or Animal Crossing or Xenoblade or Zelda in his own dedicated main game seems a bit odd to me. But during the podcast yesterday, I was asked about this rumor and I kind of thought a little bit more about it. And it occurred to me that maybe it could just be in pockets, like some parts of the game could be taking place in other Nintendo worlds, but the majority of the game could still be its own thing. And when I look at the wording here, well, it seems that Nintendo has already experimented with this and it could become a reality at some point. This here is not straight up saying that it will be just in other Nintendo worlds. So maybe it's the case that we'll get a 3D Mario game, and perhaps they're going to be taking a little bit of that Mario Wonder inspiration. Mario Wonder actually has a lot of 3D Mario inspiration, so maybe they'll go both ways. And what I'm getting at here is, you look at how they handle the Wonder Effect, and basically with the Wonder Effect, it's just this concept of a whole bunch of crazy things can happen in a particular level. So maybe this thinking can go into 3D Mario, but it'll change somewhat here in the sense that it's not so much that any particular level could be really crazy, but it could just be really crazy about where you might go, and it may be very different each time. And some of those times could be other Nintendo worlds. It wouldn't be something where it would be the main draw of the game, but it would be kind of an interesting element to the game. That some of the worlds you explore could be these things, and the worlds in general could just be really off-the-wall, crazy, weird, and interesting. Going next level here. And that I find to be perhaps fitting for the next 3D Mario game, because we've already gotten the Mario Galaxies where they've gone to space. We've done Mario Odyssey where they do different kingdoms on the planet where the Mushroom Kingdom takes place. Maybe the next step is just to go a little weirder, and Mario will be visiting different kingdoms or worlds, but they're going to be perhaps out of this world, and not just straight up space, but some exotic, unique environments that you might not expect to fit in the typical world that Mario would explore. And so there will be this element of continually surprising you, similar to the Wonder Effect in Mario Bros. Wonder. I could see Nintendo going in this direction for a 3D Mario. This feels believable to me. But only if it's done in this way. If it's a game where it's just Mario visiting other Nintendo worlds and that's just all he does, I'm not even sure that should be considered a mainline Mario game. Maybe this could be a spin-off title, It should be noted here that this is an experiment, right? So it's not necessarily going to be for the mainline 3D Mario game, although I do feel like that's the implication. We'll have to wait and see on what actually happens, or if something comes up that adds more credence to this rumor here. But I will say this, there's something else that Nashville discusses that I find interesting. And it's this part here where Zippo said some information, and this person, JL7 Gaming, asked Nashville about it, and they responded, "I can't confirm it, but I think the new Mario 3D will arrive in a few months after the launch of the new console." So is the translation. And a couple things I like here. They say they can't confirm it, so they're not pretending like they know everything, which again I think adds more credibility to the information that they provide sometimes. But also, they're talking about the next 3D Mario not necessarily launching with the new system. And this has been something I've been considering lately. I don't necessarily believe that the next 3D Mario will launch with the Switch 2, but I think it ultimately comes down to when the Switch 2 is coming out. If the Switch 2 is coming out, say, this upcoming summer, so about half a year or so from now, or perhaps a little bit more, but still months away from the holidays, then I think we have a scenario where 3D Mario shouldn't be the launch title. I think Nintendo should save 3D Mario to be the big holiday title, that first holiday that Switch 2 is around, and there should be a couple other games that come out beforehand. Maybe that Zelda remake we've been speculating could be the launch title, and maybe they could have other things like some sort of Mario Party game and a Metroid Prime 4 to come out in between, and then 3D Mario is the big holiday title, and that would be kind of like a really strong series of games for its first year. To be clear here, this isn't a leak or a rumor, this is just speculation, but I do find it interesting, and I have been thinking that maybe 3D Mario won't be the day one Switch 2 title. There may be a little bit more to this year's Switch 2, but of course that is with the assumption that Switch 2 comes out earlier in the year. Some people have been thinking that, yeah, Switch 2 will make it, but it won't be coming out until the very end. It's hard to say for certain at this point, but I have been saying that I expect Nintendo to reveal this Switch 2 by March of next year, and I don't think they're going to have a really long announcement to release window, something comparable to the Switch, which would put it as coming out before the holidays, late summer, but we shall see. What do you guys make of this information and this idea for the next 3D Mario? Does it seem believable to you? Do you think there's some credibility here? Would it at least be really interesting and fun to try out? Let me know in the comments below. This is Andres Restart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.